My view is, why are we compromising on national security issues? This
Right.
is not, this is something that shouldn't be a, I get this and you get that. After 9/11, we all understood the threat that our country faced. And no one said, you know, I'll let you have a TSA this if you give me that. It's people said, what does it take to secure the country and do it?
Right.
It blows my mind. And I know that you're a policy guy at heart, but from a messaging standpoint, I don't know why we're not out there saying this is a national security issue. Why, you know, and then full stop. Here's the threat that our country is under. Either you're with us or you're against us.
Right. And I think that's right. And it's important to remember the House took some action when they passed H.R. 2, which is a border security bill, right? Not an immigration bill, but a border security bill that had some very, very strong provisions in there to address what you are talking about from a national security perspective. What did Chuck Schumer in the Senate do? He said, well, that's a bridge too far. We won't even entertain that. Why aren't we negotiating on that bill? Why aren't we saying, hey, the House has some good provisions here. Maybe the Senate doesn't like that bill, but there were some good provisions in that bill. Instead, we said, somehow Senate Republicans said, okay, I guess we can't negotiate on that. So let us start from ground zero and come up with this other negotiated bill, which is not nearly as strong as it needs to be. What was in H.R. 2, such as Remain in Mexico, a number of other provisions were good provisions. Why aren't we negotiating on that piece of legislation? I just don't understand it. We have the worst crisis. This is talking about American lives, and somehow we go to the lowest common denominator and say, let's negotiate from that standpoint. I just don't understand.
Let me ask you a question that I think a lot of people wonder. When you see these images of documents that are left on the ground when these people come in, when someone comes in and says, my name is Joe Smith, here's where I am. Do we just take their word on it? And then are we able to ever track them again? Or are they literally just, blending into society to never to be seen again?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of both. Obviously, when individuals come across that border and they have no paperwork, right? Because they either dump them on the Mexican side, which is what they usually do, and they come in, they're fingerprinted. And so if they've crossed before, we usually have a record of them. If not, there are some other checks. And so we'll try to reach back to they say, hey, look, I'm from Honduras. We reach out to the consulate to try to understand who they are. But with the numbers that we see on that border every single day, we don't have the time to do that in a methodical way. And so a lot of these times you're having to take their word for it. If they don't pop up on any database that says they're a criminal or a national security threat, then we have to take their word for it. I just got to think to myself,
how many criminals go, my name is Joe Smith.
Right.
I committed a bunch of terrorist acts. I'm wanted in a lot of places. Is it okay if I come in?
Right. Absolutely. So now, if they're a criminal here in the United States, obviously we have information on them. We have their fingerprints and others. But if they're a criminal back in their home country or wherever they came to, and again, the information that we're checking is only as so good as that originating country has. So if they keep really good background checks, they keep really good fingerprint checks and watch lists and things of that nature, okay, I've got some confidence. But a lot of these countries don't, and we know that. And so the information is only as so good as we get. And so that's the concern.
But do we fingerprint them or have any DNA on? So if they come into our country, we find out something subsequently, can we then track them down or know that they committed a crime in the future because we've got their DNA or something when they entered the country? Well,
it's a complex answer. The question is, yes, we can track them down. It's not without resources. And it doesn't happen overnight. But yes, you can send law enforcement, immigrations and customs enforcement can track some of these individuals down.
I guess, but when they come through the border, right, and they either have documentation or not, are we getting information about that person at the time when they're claiming asylum or they're coming through the border checkpoint? Are we saying, great, give us your fingerprint, give us your DNA so that in the future we know who they are?
Yes.
Okay.
So anyone coming across that border is fingerprint. We are not, Biden administration has stopped doing DNA testing on adults coming across that border with children. During the Trump administration, we put that DNA testing in for a very specific reason. We wanted to know if that person was truly their parent, their guardian, their father, their mother, whoever it might be, or whether they were actually smuggling these children across the border. And for any number of reasons, the Biden administration said, we're not doing that any longer.
You mean so not everyone who comes across the border is telling the truth?
Right.
So speaking of telling the truth, though, there's this video that went viral the other day. This dude from Azerbaijan I'll just play it real quick for the audience in case you haven't seen it.
By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than.
All right, Chad. You know, this looks like out of a movie. This guy is like, you're gonna know my name. I sounds very reminiscent of a like a 9/11 type thing where the guy's saying, you will hear my name. I'm going to come do bad things.
Yeah.
President Trump, I was watching he's come out against this bill. NBC News on the Today Show said that he's warning of a terrorist activity without evidence. That's their thing. And I'm thinking, that's pretty solid evidence. This guy's like, literally, you're going to hear my name.
Yeah.
He's on all these watch lists. What is going on that we're letting that into the country and we know about? How are we not tracking that guy?
Yeah. So it's concerning. And the fact that he's able, that individual crossing the border feels confident enough to talk to news media or whoever and to make those types of statements tells you the type of individuals coming across that border. It's almost like a sense of entitlement. It's an entitlement in the sense of, I can come across this border. Really, nothing's going to happen to me. I know I'm not going to be removed. I'm not going to be sent back home. I'm going to get released into American communities, and there's nothing that you guys can do about it. And so he's just talking freely about, maybe you'll know who I am. I don't know who that individual is, and I think some law enforcement has taken a look at him. But there is some news reporting today about an al-Shabaab member coming across that border, being released into the United States for months and months and months, and just recently picked up in Minneapolis. I think he was released for over a year. And so that, again, that is concerning because we don't know what that individual has been doing.
So this is a Daily Caller story that came out this morning. Terrorist caught illegally crossing the border was allowed to roam free for nearly a year. Memo says federal authorities caught a terrorist at the U.S. southern border and released him into the country where he roamed freely before being arrested in Minnesota. But here's the kicker. It talks about how many of these individuals, I think it's 192. Yeah. Let's see. No, sorry, 172. Border Patrol caught 172 terror watch list suspects attempting to enter the country. This gets back to my point earlier, Chad. What are we doing when post 9/11, we all held hands and said, never again, never forget. Yeah. And here we are going, you know what? I said this to Grant Stinchfield last night on this live thing. The message should be every Republican should look at Democrats and say, how many terrorists is it acceptable to come into the country? Give me a number.
I agree with you.
Make them answer the question. How many? Because right now, 172. Is that okay? What is the number of terrorists that you're willing to allow?
And I would say that number, Sean, is probably last fiscal year. If you look at all 3 years of the Biden administration, it's 336 known or suspected terrorists that have been apprehended along that border. And as I like to say, those are the dumb ones that got caught. You got to think of the millions of got-away individuals. How many more known or suspected terrorists are in that flow that have never gotten apprehended by a law enforcement agent that is now in the United States? And so these are the national security threats that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but it's really, really important. The Biden administration has those stats and those figures. They're from the department. They're posted on the website.
Yeah.
And they look at these numbers and they say, you know what? Everything that we've done the last 3 years is working. It's working, and we're just going to keep doing more of it.